So this is part 3 of the sensory system A&P. So for this video, I'll be talking about the ears. So the ear, let's talk about the structure. The ear is divided into 3 parts. You have the external, which is the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. As you can see here, this is your outer, the middle, and then your inner. So the external ear. The external ear is part of the ear you can see. It is composed of the auricle and the external auditory canal. So the auricle, or the pinna, is composed of cartilage covered by a layer of loose-fitting skin. So the auricle functions like a satellite dish gathering sound waves. The auricle opens into the external auditory canal, which is a passageway for sound waves to enter the ear. The tympanic membrane separates the external ear from the middle ear. So that's right here. So here's your tympanic membrane. This is your middle ear. So that's what separates it. The external auditory canal is lined with tiny hairs and glands that secrete cerumen, which is your earwax. And the hairs and the cerumen also help prevent dust and other foreign objects from entering the external canal. So the middle ear, it is a small air-filled chamber located between the tympanic membrane at one end and at a bony wall at the other. So the middle ear consists of several structures. You have the tympanic membrane, 3 tiny bones, several small muscles, and the Ossicles tube. So the tympanic membrane, it is composed primarily of connective tissue and has a rich supply of nerves and blood vessels. It vibrates in response to sound waves entering the ear through the external auditory canal. The vibration of the tympanic membrane is passed onto the tiny bones in the middle ear. So those 3 tiny bones are called the ossicles, and they are the tiniest bones in the body. And they are the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, or if you want to remember them by the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup, because that's what they resemble. So here's a picture here of your middle ear. Okay. So the ossicles, they transmit vibration from the tympanic membrane to the oval window. And then that separates the middle ear from the inner ear. So the middle ear has a passageway connecting it to the pharynx, or the throat. And this passageway is called the auditory tube, or the Ossicles tube. So the purpose of this tube is to equalize the pressure on both sides of the tympanic membrane by permitting air to pass from the pharynx into the middle ear. If the pressure across the membrane becomes unequal, the tympanic membrane bulges. So pain caused by stretched tympanic membranes is why your ears sometimes hurt if you take off and land in an airplane. So let's zoom into that. You can see your malleus, the incus, and the stapes. You see your auditory tube here. That is where the Ossicles tube is. So now the inner ear. The inner ear consists of an intricate system of tubes or passageways hollowed out of the temporal bone. So the coiled network of tubes is called the bony labyrinth, and inside the bony labyrinth is a similarly shaped membranous labyrinth. So the bony labyrinth is filled with a fluid called perilymph, and the membranous labyrinth is surrounded by a perilymph, and it is self-filled with a thick fluid called the endolymph. So we'll zoom in to take a look at that. The blue portion is the bony labyrinth, and the tanner portion is the membranous labyrinth. Okay. So the inner ear, it has 3 parts. It's the vestibule, the semicircular canals, and the cochleae. And the cochlear is concerned with hearing. So the vestibular and the semicircular canals are concerned with balance. So we'll take a look here. This is your cochlear, the vestibular nerve, and the semicircular canals are right over here. So the cochlear, it is snail-shaped. It's part of the bony labyrinth. And sitting on a membrane with the cochlear and immersed in the infolimb are the receptors for hearing. So the receptors are cells that contain tiny hairs. They are called the organ of Corti. And when the hairs on the receptor cells are bent, a nerve impulse is sent by the cochlear branch and the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is your cranial nerve 8, to the primary auditory cortex of the temporal lobe of the brain. And this is where the sensation is interpreted as hearing. So cochlear nerve damage develops for several reasons. So for example, rock and roll deafness is hearing loss associated with loud music. And nerve damage also occurs in response to certain drugs, especially antibiotics. So drugs that cause damage to the vestibulocochlear nerve are called ototoxic agents, such as aspirin. Nerve conduction deafness is commonly experienced by the elderly, and this is called presbycusis. So we'll zoom in here. So this snail shape that you see over here, that's your cochlear. And remember, that's the portion that is concerning your hearing. Okay. So let's talk about sense of balance. So the vestibular and the semicircular canals, collectively called the vestibular apparatus, they are concerned with equilibrium, which we know is our balance. So the receptors for balance are mechanoreceptors and are located within the semicircular canals and vestibule. So there are two types of equilibrium or balance. That is your static and your dynamic equilibrium. So with static equilibrium, it senses the position of head and it maintains the past year when the body makes no sudden movement. The dynamic equilibrium, it detects sudden movements of the head and maintains posture while the body is moving or rotating. So let's rethink. What is the passageway connecting the middle ear to the pharynx? The eustachian tube. Which structure would be affected if a patient had an inner ear infection? The cochlear. Drugs that cause damage to the ear are called what? Ototoxic drugs. What separates the middle ear? What separates the external ear from the middle ear? The tympanic membrane. What are the three tiny bones of the middle ear? Your hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which are your malleus, incus, and the stapes. What is the snail-shaped part of the bony labyrinth and is concerned with hearing? The cochlear. Which structures of the ear are involved in maintaining equilibrium? The vestibular and semicircular canals. So that's it.